We want to introduce you to RapidMask, the newest in the family of sand carving photoresist films from Photoresist, based on an original concept of DuPont. And Vince is going to walk us through this process. Hi, Vince.
How are you doing, Tom?
I'm good. Now, from what I've read, this is a really easy three-step process.
Absolutely, very easy.
And what are those steps?
Well, basically, it's 3 steps. We expose the film, we apply it to the glass, and then we blast it. And then we're finished.
Expose, apply, blast. Even I can remember that.
Yeah, it's simple.
Okay. Is there a washout process with RapidMask?
No, it's a non-washout film. It has the adhesive is already built into the film, so
Great.
we don't have to worry about adding adhesive to the product.
So what do you need to make RapidMask happen?
We don't need much time. You don't need any of the developing equipment or the
Okay.
drying equipment. All we need to start with is a computer-generated piece of artwork.
Okay.
You need an exposure unit like this electrolyte here.
All right.
Or a flatbed unit like you see back here.
Okay.
But any UV light exposure unit will work. And then the third and most important thing is you need a sand carver and the abrasive that goes into the sand carver.
Right. So all you're saying we need is the computer-generated art,
Correct.
the exposure unit, and a sand carver.
Right.
All right. So where do we go from here?
Well, how about if I tell you a little about the films themselves, okay?
Great.
We have 2 versions of RapidMask. One is called RapidMask High Tech.
Okay,
All right?
high
And that's a
tech.
4 mil product. And it's used for conventional etching, things that people tend to do in the way of trophies or awards and things like that.
I see.
And here's an example of something like that. You can see that there's some depth here in the writing, but there's no real fine detail on here. Okay, so that's where you'd use the 4 mil RapidMask High Tech film.
Okay. So the normal line art is going to use the high tech.
That's correct.
All right.
That's
and what's
correct.
the other type?
Okay, the other type of film we have is a RapidMask High Detail.
All right.
And we call it High Detail because it allows you to resolve very, very fine detail work, which is something unique to this concept. And for example, here was a painting that was taken and actually etched onto a piece of glass or film.
So you can do a photograph
Yes,
with
you can.
high detail.
Yes, you can.
All right.
Up to 65 dots per inch.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Well, where would we start from the very beginning to make this process happen? I'm guessing it's going to be artwork. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. The most important part of the process, in fact. And with RapidMask, because of the way the film is processed, we actually use what's called a photo negative instead of a photo positive.
Now that looks just the opposite of what I used before.
Right, this is what you used to use before.
Okay.
And the reason it's different is because over here, the areas that were black were the areas that got etched.
Aha.
All right. In the case of RapidMask, the areas that are clear are the areas that are going to etch.
I see. And this looks very dense.
And it's very important when using a photo negative that the dark, dense areas be very dense, because one thing you have to remember is where the light goes through this artwork is what you're going to etch. So if there's a pinhole anywhere in that dark area, you're going to etch it. And you
Okay.
don't want that to happen.
Right.
So what we've done is we've actually created a family of products called our AccuArt films. And what these films are, they're designed to use in inkjet printers, not laser printers.
Aha.
Inkjet printers.
Inkjet, okay.
And that will actually go right into your paper tray and print out this quality of artwork right from the computer.
And this is reusable.
This is absolutely reusable. You use it over and over again. This is like your working tool that you make, but you have to start with this. And as I tell most customers, it doesn't get any better than the artwork. You've got to have good artwork. If there's a mistake here, you're going to have a mistake in your etched product, and that's something you don't want.
Okay.
So it's very important to have good artwork.
Now what if you're used to using vellum paper?
We don't really recommend vellum, although you can use what we call it's a positive FX film, and it looks just like this.
Okay.
All right. And what this is designed for is for a laser printer. All right? But with this particular thing, you have to be careful that the density is what you need in order not to have light coming through for the exposure step.
And this goes through the laser printer.
This goes through the laser printer and only the laser printer.
Very good.
Okay. So you have the 2 different options, but the one that we absolutely recommend is the one we called the AccuArt.
Right.
Okay?
So we've got our artwork. Now what's the next step in the process?
Okay. Let me describe the film a little bit to you.
Okay.
Again, we're working with a RapidMask high-tech film, and the high-tech film has a shiny carrier side, that you can see here.
Right.
And then there's a layer of photopolymer after that. On the other side, we have a slip sheet that goes against the polymer and protects it.
And how can you tell which is the slip sheet?
Okay, the best thing to do, because the sides are very similar here, is that we actually take our fingernail and just rub on the corner here. You can feel how hard this side is.
Right.
If we flip it over and then put your fingernail on there again, you feel how much softer it is.
Yep.
That's the slip sheet side.
Soft side is slip sheet side.
Correct. Now, This is a UV sensitive product, all right, which means simply that it is responding to UV light.
Yeah, and I've heard a rumor that you can only work on RapidMask film in the dark. Is that true?
No, it is not true at
Okay.
all. No, it is not true. There's no difference between this photopolymer and any other photopolymers. Photopolymers are generally sensitive to some form of white light because there is a UV component. But the fact is, this particular product is no more or less sensitive than any other product. But there is a difference. This film you don't wash out, and therefore it remains photosensitive through the blasting. And it's very important then that during the course of time you don't expose this to a lot of white light.
Right. So if you're working on it, and let's say the phone rings, you have to leave the room, what do you do?
You just cover it, or put it in a drawer or whatever, but you basically cover the film so it's not exposed to light.
Okay.
But you have every bit of 2 to 4 working hours of time in a regular white light environment before you'd have to worry about any problem with the film performance.
Okay. So Vince, you've explained the artwork.
Right.
Told us about the film.
Yep.
I'm guessing we're ready to expose the film.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And that's really very easy as well. So at this point we would take our artwork, we bring the slip sheet side against the printed side of the artwork. This is the side that was printed on when it came out of your computer.
Okay.
All right. Bring those two in very close contact. And it's very important that the contact be maintained closely between the artwork and the film. So we're going to take our exposure unit, and the way you have to orient this, because the light comes through the cylinder, you want to make sure it goes through the artwork first and then to the film. So we're going to turn this over, make sure that we have it lined up exactly the way we want it.
Right.
We're going to turn it over, and then we're going to put it in here, and then roll this around so that we maintain good contact, and that's what this blanket does. It keeps good contact between the artwork and the film.
Okay.
Very important.
So now, in the exposure unit, how long are we going to expose the film for?
We're going to set this one, this particular product, for about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, and so we'll just dial here on the indicator, 2 minutes.
And what's going to happen during these 2 minutes?
2 things are happening in here. Actually, the film is changing color. It's going from that green color that we started out with to a blue color, which you see here. And it's also getting brittle in those areas. And that's very important that the film gets brittle, because that's how it works. When we go from here, we're going to go right onto a piece of glass and into the machine to blast it. And where the film has turned brittle, the abrasive hits it, shatters it, and the etching begins immediately.
So brittle equals good.
Brittle equals very good,
Okay.
that's correct. And in fact, that's why we need to have enough energy for 2 minutes to get into the film to make it brittle.
And how can you tell if it's brittle?
Okay, the one thing that's neat about this film is it actually tells you, you can set up your exposure unit and the film will tell you when it's had enough exposure. And the way you do that is you take a little strip of film like this and you would put it into the light source, and you'd try some various time settings on your light unit. Take this out and you bend it back on itself until it snaps.
Snap, yes.
Okay?
Okay.
And that's very important because you need it to snap in order for it to work in the sandblaster. That's how this film works. When it gets brittle, that becomes the area that the abrasive will hit and shatter and start etching the glass.
So you want to make sure you don't underexpose this
That's
film.
correct. The very important thing is to make sure you get enough energy in it so it gets brittle. Okay. On the other end, you do have a lot of exposure latitude on the top end. You know, you could overexpose this material and it's not going to hurt it as long as you have good artwork.
All right.
And it's good and dense.
So it sounds like the exposure is done, so I'm guessing we're going to step 2, application. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right,
That's
so
correct.
talk us through that.
Okay, sure. First, let's show you the results of the expose step that we just went through.
All right, removing it from the exposure unit.
Right, and as you can see, we have the blue areas, which is the printout image.
Just like you said.
Right, and the areas that are blue are the areas that we're going to get blasted away in the blaster.
Okay.
So the next thing we want to do is actually apply it to the glass or the substrate.
And the glass is the substrate today, but you can use any kind of substrate, is that
Any
right?
kind of a substrate like a marble or a granite or a ceramic. Any hard, non-porous surface essentially would work in this application for this.
You're using glass, and I'm guessing it needs to be cleaned.
Absolutely. And any window cleaner, glass cleaner, anything like that, just to remove the fingerprints and any grease marks so that the adhesive layer that's in here will stick uniformly across the glass.
Okay, well tell me how to apply this to the glass.
Okay, we're going to leave the slip sheet on
right.
so that we can get this thing aligned and positioned where we want it on the glass. And then once we have that where we want it on there, we simply lock it down by putting a piece of tape on one of the edges, like that.
And is this called anything special?
We call this the hinge method because the next thing we're going to do is hinge it back.
Very good.
Yeah. And once we've done that, now we want to remove this slip sheet so that we can apply to the glass.
Right.
And one thing you're going to notice that I do here is after I remove this slip sheet, I'm not going to let this fall back onto the glass because we don't want to trap any air between the film and the glass. Very important when you go into etching, or you may have areas that actually blast through that you don't want. So we just take the piece of tape and put it on the corner here like that, and the slip sheet comes right off.
Wonderful. That's great. And this is the adhesive side then?
And this is the adhesive side, so this is tacky. So, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just let it come back down this way. And I'm going to gradually start it, and then take my squeegee and simply take it down and apply it to the glass. And then make sure that I've moved the air out on all sides.
Okay.
All right. We can actually take this piece of tape off at this point.
All right.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I have all the air out of there and that the adhesion is really good to the glass. As you can see, by using this hinge method, we have very good adhesion, very uniform adhesion throughout. There's no air trapped in here. Okay, so the next step is really to go into the sand carver.
Is there anything else you need to do before you take it?
Only to mask off the edges of the glass so that you don't have any problems with that. And of course, we do still have the carrier on here.
Right.
And just simply by taking a piece of tape, as we did before, putting it on the corner, you can lift that carrier right up, and it comes right off. And the masking is really just that. It's taking a piece of masking tape and going around the edges to protect the edges of the glass from overblasting from the sand carver. The edges need to be down really good and tight because there's a lot of pressure and abrasive moving around in the blaster. You don't want that to get up underneath. So just make sure those are down good and tight. And then what I typically do is, rather than fold this back around the back of the glass, I fold it on itself. And that's actually very helpful when it comes time to remove the masking tape. Okay, just fold it on itself instead of wrapping it around the glass. Okay.
And once you're done with this masking process, then are you ready for step 3, the sand carving?
We're ready to go to sand carving.
You know, this was always a part of the process I always really liked. I don't suppose you'd let me get a first shot at it. Well,
sure. I think you've learned enough here today that I think you could do a great job at this, Tom.
All right.
Okay.
Let me give it a shot.
Hey, Tom, how'd you make out?
Well, I think I did all right, Vince. What do you think?
Let me look at that. Not bad.
Okay.
Well, the next step is to remove the mask that's on here.
Okay.
And that's really a very, very simple step. And the first thing to do is take off the masking tape on the edge. Now, you could either do that in the water or outside. It doesn't really matter. But we're going to take it off out here. I'm just going to literally soak this in here for about 15 seconds to loosen the film. And then I'm going to start to peel it off.
Okay.
Now, that's one option. The other option is to leave it in here for about 15-20 minutes. And if you have other things to go do, you could just let this soak, and it actually helps to remove it even easier.
And then you could come back to it later.
Come back later on and take it off.
What if you, could you use it with warm running water?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just run it under the spigot with warm to hot. The hotter the better, because the faster it'll come off.
Okay.
As long as your hands can tolerate that. And then you start to rub it off under the running water. But make sure the water is always running over it, because you don't want to scratch the glass, because there's a lot of abrasive that was still on there.
All right.
So keep the water flowing, and that way the glass won't scratch. You see how easy it is to remove once you soaked it.
That's right.
But you see these strings of resist are going into the water, and these are fully biodegradable. So it is not harmful to any municipal sewage or waste treatment system. And the longer it would sit in here, the easier this would be. Okay. But I want to keep it submerged because I don't want to scratch that glass as I'm peeling it. Okay, that's clean now. That's the first thing we want to do is dry off the and then hold hold it up and look at it.
Oh my, yeah.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Nice job.
And it's a very simple three-step process.
Yes,
That's
it is.
what I like about
Expose, apply, and blast.
Great.
And you're finished.
Good.
You know, Tom, you did such a great job of etching it. But really what makes these stand out is the way you display them. Okay, so we're going to try an illuminated base.
Okay.
I want you to see how this actually comes alive.
Oh my gosh.
Is that not great?
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's an awesome picture.
Yeah, and it couldn't be any easier, you know.
Right.
There you have it, expose, apply, blast, RapidMask photoresist film from Photoresist.
Yeah, see how easy this film is to use?
Very. Vince, you've shown us how the line art works.
Right.
Now earlier you showed me that picture, and I really want to incorporate photographs. How do I make that happen with RapidMask?
Okay, well, actually, since we've been through that process, there are a lot of similarities in the two processes. In fact, it's still an expose, apply, blast process.
All right.
However, when we get to the artwork, that's where things start to change a little bit, because the artwork now becomes even more critical. And some other things become critical in this operation. For example, one of the things that we have to be very sensitive to is the cleanliness of the environment that we're working in. Little dirt particles now entering into doing a photograph can actually affect the outcome of the etching.
So this is much more precise than line art.
Very, very, very more precise. And when I explain to you what we have to etch, you'll understand that a little bit clearer as we go forward. Let's just go ahead and start out with a photograph.
All right.
And here would be an example of a little baby that was given to you as let's say, an actual hard print.
Okay.
This could have come to you either digitally through a digital camera, or someone could have emailed this to you. The most important thing to do from this point is to take this and get it into your computer.
Okay.
And there are a variety of different software packages that you can use to manipulate the image once it's in there. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take this, and in this case we would scan this into our computer.
All right.
Okay. Once we bring it into the computer on the screen, the first thing we want to do is you're going to have to make it black and white. And then you actually make a halftone of it.
Okay.
Now there's software that's out there that does that for you. And to try to make it even simpler, what we've done is that we worked with Corel, and they've actually developed a program that goes in concert with their Corel graphics package. That's called HalfWiz. And what this allows you to do with a couple clicks of the icon is actually create the halftone from the picture that you have scanned into your computer.
Okay.
Okay. And it's very important, once again, going back to the discussion we had before about the artwork, that we have the good, dense artwork, once again, so that we get the good images. But more importantly, if you look at this very closely, you're going to see what we've done on the computer is generated a series of dots. That's really nothing more than a dot tone going across there. And with this particular film, we have the capability of going as high as 65 dots per inch, which is a very, very high detailed image. All right. So essentially what's going to happen is you're going to be blasting one dot away while the next one is staying there protecting the glass.
All right.
So the closer these dots get, the more difficult the etching process becomes. So then the next step, of course, is to take the RapidMask film, and again we're using the high detail film, which is what we're going to do. Again, the structure is the same. It's a 3-layer structure. The only difference is this is a 2mm film instead of a 4mm film.
Okay.
And the reason for that is when you're doing a halftone, you can't etch very deeply. You're really basically going to only get through the film and just touch the glass.
All right.
Because if you start going too deep with the dots very close together, you're going to over etch and your image is going to be destroyed.
All right.
So the fact that we only need a little bit of time in the etcher, we go to a thinner film, we get better resolution, we get a much better product at the end, and everybody's happy when you have a better product like that. Now let's take a piece of film. And again, we're going to expose through the slip sheet side of the film, just like we did before.
Right, so that's the same.
That's the same. We're going to bring that in contact with the artwork, just like we did before.
Okay.
And the printed side, again, goes against the slip sheet side.
You're going to put it in the exposure unit.
Go in the exposure unit, and again, the same orientation applies. The light goes through the artwork.
All right.
Okay, and down onto the film.
And again, you want a nice tight seal.
And here, more importantly, you want an absolutely good seal. I mean, you really need to have a good seal. Now, for example, if there's any dirt that might be seen here as a result of static electricity, make sure it's wiped off and clean so it doesn't interfere with the exposure step. Because
this film is thinner, is it going to change the exposure time?
That's a good question, because yes, it will. We don't need as much exposure to get to the same level of brittleness so that it will blast. And we're going to expose this for about 1.5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and again, the same principle applies. We have to get enough energy in so that it will blast, but we still have a little bit of latitude on the upside. But we try to maintain this between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes.
And the same things are happening
generally
in the exposure unit.
Exactly.
Right,
it's changing color, it's getting brittle, only where you see the clear area of the artwork. So when this artwork comes out, when this film comes out of here, it's going to look a little different than the other one did.
Okay.
Because you're going to have these dots so close together. One's imaged, the one next to it is unexposed. Okay.
Okay. So the exposure unit is done. Now we're ready to apply. Is that right?
Right. And here's where another difference comes in.
Okay.
Okay. So let's take it out of the exposure unit first. I'll show you what the image looks like. And just as we had before, there's the image and there's the artwork. So the image has been transferred, and you still have the printout image just like we did with the previous product.
Right. Okay.
Now here's where things change. The application method that we're going to use, again applying this to the glass substrate, is a little bit different. Again, we want to make sure there's no dirt here. We have cleaned our glass completely.
Right.
All right. No lint, no dust left behind. All right. It's very critical. And we're going to go through the process of applying it. Now we can do a couple of things, but the best way to do this and get it both registered and positioned is to do what we call a wet lamination technique. And the reason for that is that we want to make sure there is absolutely no chance of air being trapped between the film and the substrate.
Okay.
It's very critical in this process.
So what's the first step that you're going to do then?
Well, the way we start is basically as we did before, except now I'm going to remove the slip sheet away from the glass. All right. And again, I use the tape on there.
Right.
And I'm going to pull this back, and the slip sheet comes off.
Okay. Once again, very easy.
Very easily.
Right.
All right. And now what we're going to do, instead of just dropping this down on there, because we remember it would be very difficult to try to align it if we did, we're going to wet that, and we're going to wet the film just with spritz of water.
Okay.
All right. Now what we can do, we can essentially put this down. You can see I can maneuver it around because it's wet. I can pick it up. All right. And once I get it exactly where I want it lined up here on the glass, okay, like so. There's still water under there. I could still pick it up if I wanted to and move it around. But once you've got it where you want it, now all you're going to do is, again, with the squeegee, working from the center out, just squeegee the water out.
So you're getting all the water and all the air bubbles out.
And you notice there is not an air bubble appearing here.
Right.
All the water takes care of all of that for you. And now what you want to make sure is that the water is all out of there. You squeegee that down really well. Wipe it dry. And now, because of the water that's been accumulated between the film and the substrate, we're going to let this sit for about 10 or 15 minutes just to make sure that we have our adhesion of the film to the glass, because that's important.
So, Vince, we waited 15 minutes. This is all dry. Now, what are some of the differences? Let's recap some of those differences between the high tack and the high detail. It started with the artwork, didn't it?
That's correct. That's correct. And probably the main thing there is to make sure that you take your photograph and transfer it into a halftone, because you have to do that in order for it to etch.
And that's where half whiz from Corel comes in.
That's
is that right?
correct. That's correct.
Very good. Then different exposure time and the exposure unit.
Yeah, it's a little lower exposure time because we have a thinner film, so we're only in there for 1.5 minutes.
Okay. More attention to cleanliness, making sure no dust particles.
Very critical point. Very critical point. No dirt, dust. You know, minimize. You want to minimize that at every step in the process.
Okay. And lastly was the application method, using the wet method as opposed to the hinge method.
Correct. And primarily because we want to make sure the air is removed from the film, between the film and the glass.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and take off the carrier.
Right.
And then we do again the same thing we did before. We're going to just take a piece of tape, go to corner here, grab the carrier,
Just comes
and
right off.
it just comes right off.
Okay.
Right.
So now I guess we need to finish taping it off.
Yep.
And then we're ready to blast it after that. Is that right?
That's
so
correct.
You're going to do the same method of folding it in on itself.
Folding the tape over on itself, so
Okay.
it's easy to remove after we finish blasting. Right.
And you know, I had a good time blasting the other one. I wouldn't mind blasting this one as well. Anything I need to know?
Well, yeah, there are some things you need to know, and I think you did such a great job on that other one. I have all the confidence that you can do this one.
Go
So,
on.
number one, the fact that we've got this series of dots that we're blasting, it's not blasting as usual. Okay, you've got to be very careful when you go in there. The tendency is, number one, it's going to take a little longer to blast.
Okay.
Because this abrasive has to get down between the dots, and it takes a little bit longer for that to occur, particularly the closer the dots are. So. The tendency for a lot of people is they want to rush that process and they bring the nozzle closer and closer, and next thing you know they're removing the dots that they don't want to remove, and the etched quality just is terrible at the end.
So I need to be patient.
You need to be patient.
Okay. And
Absolutely.
I won't panic, and I'll just be patient.
That's right. Take your time, and you will see the image start to appear.
Okay.
And as you do, you're just going to go over it a few times and make sure it's cleaned up, but you're not going to get much depth when you etch a halftone.
All right.
Because if you do, as you go deeper, it goes wider, and it absolutely will remove those dots next to it, and you will destroy your image. So you're only going to be able to really basically break through, do a mild etch, and then it's all over.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think I want to give it a shot.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Right.
All right, Tom. Tom, again, you did an excellent job of etching this. All right, so now it's again the same process we went through before.
Okay.
We're just going to remove the tape real quickly here.
And you like to remove the tape first before you put it
Yeah,
in
it's
the
a whole
water.
lot. I think it's easier, and otherwise it gets wet and messy if you put it in here.
And same soak time?
Same soak time.
Okay.
Again, if you wanted to do it and come back a half hour from now, it'd be a whole lot easier to take off.
Okay.
And again, you want to make sure you keep it underwater while you're rubbing it, either running water or soaking it like this so that you don't scratch the glass.
Mm-hmm. And also biodegradable like before. So
Same. It's the same product. It's really just a thinner version of it. Tom, you did such a great job on that line art etching, and I can't believe the job you did on this halftone. Wasn't it easy to do?
It was really easy, yeah.
Wasn't it though?
Yeah.
Now watch what we're going to do. The same thing we did with the line art etch. We're going to actually put this in the illuminated base and watch it come alive.
That just looks terrific.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Nice job, Tom.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. A beautiful photograph permanently etched on the glass using RapidMask Photoresist film from Photoresist.